and I play out my dream scenario, like what I think is going to be easier or whatever, I'm only going to come back and try to start something all over again, just like I'm doing now, trying to figure out how to build something. So if I'm destined to be in this spot, I should quit complaining and just figure it out.
This is the Staying Power Podcast, a show that explores the challenges business owners face as they grow. I'm Brandon Hall.
And I'm Thomas Castelli.
And together, we ask the tough questions to show you that running a business is not for the faint of heart. But if you have staying power, you'll overcome your challenges and achieve lasting success.
Hey, everybody. We're going to be interviewing today David Cristello. He's CEO and founder of Jetpack Workflow, a software company built to help accounting firm owners manage deadlines without client work falling through the cracks. Since launch, Jetpack Workflow serves thousands of firm owners in 17 plus countries and help them complete millions of tasks monthly.
Yeah, David was a super exciting guest. I'm so pumped that we're about to show you guys the conversation that we had here. I've always wondered, software in general, how long does it take to build something like this? And so we dive into that with David. And he kind of talks about from the very early stages of just trying to find the idea. He talks about a couple failures that he experienced along the way, and then what ultimately gave him the idea to launch Jetpack Workflow. So I thought that was a really cool conversation. And it just kind of shows you that building successful businesses is tough. It takes a long time, and there's really no such thing as overnight successes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, another thing that he pointed out is that he kind of played back in his mind his ideal life if he went and got a job or took on another 1099 role. And that was that he'd always be coming back and trying to build something. And he ultimately decided, hey, look, if no matter which way I play out the scenario, I'm always going to be coming back and trying to build something. I might as well just stop complaining about it and just make it happen. And I thought that was a huge takeaway there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also talked a little bit about building a team, which I thought was really helpful. David will tell you he's not the technical guy, so he had to go out and hire the software developers and figure out how to build a team when he doesn't really understand the language that they're speaking. And that was a great conversation and kind of led us into the sales conversation too that we had. And he gives you some really good sales tips for how to really identify the customer need at the end of the day and how to speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic episode. Really excited to bring it to you. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. David, thanks you so much for taking the time to come on today's show. Would you be able to give our listeners a brief background on yourself and what you have going on?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. So I'm David Cristello, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow. We are a software as a service application that helps primarily accounting firm owners track all of the recurring deadlines, due dates, so that nothing falls through the cracks. So payroll schedules, bookkeeping schedules, tax schedules, CFO advisory schedules. We make sure that the owner has visibility on what needs to get done, if it is getting done, and of course, manage their team through our cloud-based app and make sure you can message them, collaborate with them, and manage them effectively.
Now, you started off as a social worker, right? So what made you transition into Jetpack Workflow, or what did that trajectory look like?
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. So I graduated with a degree in psychology, which allows me to do everything and nothing at the same time. So, I started having this interest in entrepreneurship. I didn't even know it was a word until I was about 22. And I read a book and it talked about entrepreneurs. And prior to reading that book, I always thought, well, there's small business owners and there's corporate America. And I grew up in a family business that had its challenges. You had brothers feuding a lot and didn't seem to be a very fulfilling environment. So I never thought I'd be going into business, saw this word entrepreneurship, saw this concept of being able to create something and build something to help people, to solve problems. And so I started becoming deeply fascinated by how do you start something? How do you build something from scratch? And I came across this belief that you don't need to be the expert. You don't need to be even the software developer or whatever to go out and build a successful product or business. You need to go out and find a painful problem, and you need to figure out how to pull together resources to solve that problem. It could all come from you. It could come from recruiting a team, getting investment dollars, whatever it may be. And so when I came across that belief, it just was one of those, handful of times in my life, it just felt so true. It's just one of those simple truths that I immediately bought into. Yes, if you're solving a painful problem for people, you should be able to build a business. And so then the only challenge became at that point was, could I go out and find a problem painful enough to solve that people would pay for? And I started going out and interviewing people nonstop. I did a 6-month journey, essentially of trying to interview different industries on my hunt for painful problems.
And how did you pick those industries?
So there was the criteria. So an old mentor of mine, Dane Maxwell, came up with this criteria, and he said, well, you want to go after markets that typically B2B. So you want to talk with business owners. Business owners, and look, I love consumers. Look, I'm a consumer, right? But they're weird. Like sometimes they want to be entertained. Sometimes they want to be connected. Sometimes they want to find love or passion. I don't know. To me, that's very, very challenging to figure out how to solve those things. So business owners typically, make purchasing decisions on, does it save me time? Does it make me money? And so he said, well, look at different business industries, make sure there's at least 10,000 of them, make sure you can get the business owner on the phone, and make sure that they use some piece of software currently, because it's going to be very challenging if they don't use any software to go in and not only convince them software is good, which is very, very challenging, and it requires a lot of work to educate somebody, but then you also have to build something for them as well. So I kind of listed out a couple industries I thought were really interesting, and dental practices were one of them. And I talked with them for a couple months, and I can't even remember exactly why accountants popped in my head. I might have been literally driving around and just daydreaming about different businesses, different markets and different industries. And I saw CPAs, and I said, you know what, I'm going to email 100 accounting firms in New York City with this question. I would just email them, hey, Bob, quick question. What's the most painful, tedious, time-consuming, annoying problem you're facing in your business every day? Just hit reply and let me know, even if it's one sentence, it'll mean the world to me. P.S. Promise I have nothing to sell. Sincerely, from David, at my personal email with my cell phone number all attached. This email address. And lo and behold, one of the sparks, and goodness, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but somebody called me up from that email, called me directly. And they said, hey, you the guy that emailed me something painful problem, something. I said, yeah, it has to be me. I don't know how many other people send these emails. So that's me. And he started going on and on about how much he didn't like QuickBooks point of sale systems, which at that time when he said QuickBooks, I'm like, I don't know what that is. When he said point of sale, I was like, I don't know what that is either, but go on, tell me more. And he was like, well, it doesn't work because of this, this, and this. And clients having problems for this, this, and this. And like, okay, point of sale and QuickBooks. I was like, why don't you use a competitor? And he started telling me all about all these issues, right? And it was the most articulate, clarifying call. I mean, this guy was so clear on what he didn't like about point of sale systems. It was amazing to me that it put so much thought into point of sale systems. And I said, this has been one of the best calls I've ever had. I love this. In true Newark fashion, he's like, look, after 6 minutes of talking, and he gave me 9 pages of information because he was talking a million miles a minute. He goes, look, I got to run. I don't have that much time. Got to run. I was like, hey, wait. How do I find more people like you? And he's like, well, Google search QuickBook Pro Advisor. There's thousands of us. We're all the same. Go email all of us. I said, brilliant, right? So then I would open it up every day. I would manually send out one by one. Now there's tools that automate this, but every day, one by one, I would open up Quick Pro Advisors, grab the email, and send out 100 emails every day. You know how people stretch before they go to the gym or play basketball or do stuff like that? To me, that was my daily stretch. Every day, 100, right? Just crack my neck, get myself ready for the day, 100 emails every morning to QuickBook Pro Advisors, the same email. Painful, tedious, painful problem. And that sparked, having about 100 phone calls about what it was like to run an accounting firm.
And how long was that process from start to maybe launch?
All right. So I'll give you the real answer because you told me prior to hitting record, this is like a podcast, you give real answers.
Real answers. Yeah.
So this is the real journey. So I'll give you the real timeline. I don't think I've ever given anybody the real timeline. So 2012, I said, hey, I might want to start something. I'm going to go out and interview people to start something. I bought this course in 2012. I think 2013, I was like, hey, I'm going to, you know what? I think it's accountants. I think accountants need some help. I'm going to go help accountants. I love accountants. This sounds great. 2013, I sold 10 firms on this idea. So they bought this PDF essentially that said, hey, I'm going to build this software. If you guys buy it, pre-purchase it, and I'll refund you for life if you hate it. And then we launched, and I hired a software developer with the $5,000 of pre-sale that I had, which I thought clearly is enough to build software. Full disclosure, I was about 100 times off. It takes literally, probably all in at Jetpack Workflow. I mean, we spent certainly multiple millions of dollars at this point. But so I was like, $5,000, I should be able to build an app. That's not true. So I just kept feeding it myself because my quote unquote day job was a freelance marketer. I was writing web copy and writing emails and good stuff like that. And I would say we launched a year later. probably in February, March of 2014 is when we had like something people could log into, kind of check off some stuff. It's very early, very scrappy, but at least people could go in and start using it. And then we kind of just, grinded along for about 2 years. It wasn't until 2016 where we made our first hire, ran our first payroll. It was the first time I myself was ever on payroll. I was like, oh my gosh, I finally get a consistent, reliable paycheck every 2 weeks. Like, this is a great drug. Every 2 weeks, I get this hit. Boom. I can't believe it. I'm on payroll. It was such like a big moment. I'm like, I finally made it. And we raised a little bit of money that year. But yeah, it took about a year from somebody saying, yes, I'll buy it, wrote me a check, to actually getting it into their hands.
And then that was like a year and a half before, or maybe a year before somebody said, yes, they'd buy it. So we're looking at like a 2-year journey here from kind of the idea popping into your head to launch.
Yeah. I mean, it was always, the way I always looked at it was, so, the thing I'm kind of the perspective I'm attracted to when building something, when launching something is like, what are all the ways you can reduce the risk as you're building and launching something? It could be an app. It could be a professional firm. It could be tennis camps. Prior to Jetpack Workflow, I ran tennis camps. And I didn't create a business plan that said, this is how you're going to dominate the Western Pennsylvania market of tennis camps. And believe me, I never ended up dominating it anyways. But what I did is I had this thought. I said, kids might want to go play tennis camps. There's no tennis camps in, hometown I was in. Wasn't very much of a tennis community. And I just created a flyer. I put it up on 8 different tennis parks where they have courts. I said, email me. I got 15, 20 people to sign up. And I was like, okay, it looks like I'm going to have to run a tennis camp. Now, if nobody signed up, I would have been like, okay, I guess I'm not running a tennis camp. If 3 people signed up, I probably would still do it just for the, building the muscle of it. So when I look at software, it's like, what are all the ways I can de-risk this? So number one, the greatest risk in any business isn't if you can build it or not. Typically, the greatest risk is, will anybody ever buy it? Are you actually doing something useful enough that people will purchase what you're about to sell? So by interviewing people, by extracting the painful problems, by pre-selling it, you get a customer. You could tell them straight up, look, I don't have anything. I'll refund you if you don't like it. I'll sign anything you need me to say I'll refund it. Great. But you're really validating that this is something important to them. Business owners vote with their wallet each and every day. So you can't just trust somebody if they say, yeah, it sounds great. Let me know when it launches. No, you need $1, at least $1. Everything changes when you put $1 on the table. And so I got $5,000 pre-sale money. And yeah, I put probably another 10, 15 grand of my own money in there, which to me wasn't a big deal. I just always chalked it up like, look, if it goes bust, best education of my life. And I had so little expenses, right? It was just me. I was living in a $300 a month room. I had 5 roommates, right? So I had like no downside. I didn't have any expenses. I drove a 25-year-old car. I had nothing. I lived in Pittsburgh. You can, live off of here and for pennies on the dollar. And so I launched it, and then people started using it, and they started saying, hey, finally I can replace my file cabinets. Finally, I can replace my process sheets. Finally, this is something I can replace my spreadsheet with. And I'm like, okay, cool. Sounds like this is something people really get value from. I think we're onto something here. And so we just kind of grew pretty slowly, and people kept using it. And, but at any given time in those first 2 years, not that I would ever forecast that it wouldn't work out, but I could always course correct very quickly. I didn't have this multi-year plan. Early on, when you're launching something, it is so new. There's no data to tell you if it's going well or not, other than are people paying for it or are people using it? Brandon, when you got your first client, it probably was very telling, or the first 5 clients, how they interacted with you and the value they got from it. And you could adjust how you delivered your services or how you talked about them based off of real client interaction. So yeah, this is about 2 years. And I always try to think about cutoff points, in that journey.
Okay, so it was about 2 years, from inception to going to market. Once you brought it to market, what were some of the challenges you were facing when scaling it, when bringing it from just a small group to a bigger audience?
Everything. I had all the challenges all the time, literally. So I'll break it down for you. Technology challenge. I'm not a software developer. Design challenge. I'm not a designer. UX challenge. I'm not a UX designer. Didn't have marketing dollars. Now I'm an okay marketer, but it's not like I could be like, oh yeah, here's 50 grand. Let's just go blow it up, at X, Y, and Z conference. No, so marketing's a challenge. Sales. I'd never done sales in my life. Sales is a challenge, So financing, right? I didn't have enough cash, even at the early launch, to pay for the software developer that I had hired, right? So I was still bleeding my own cash. I mean, my tax return that year, I was like, I was doing quarterly estimates. I like way overpaid because I had this insane loss, on the balance sheet. So look, I think the first challenge was knowing that some of those things I could pick up. Sales I could pick up. You can learn the basics of selling as long as you don't have a lot of head trash. I think you can pick up sales pretty quickly. Marketing, I think you can pick it up pretty quickly. If you kind of have some natural DNA in that aspect, you can pick it up quickly. What I can't pick up quickly is how to architect a software application for it to scale. What I can't pick up quickly is, at least for me, is, how to be a great product manager, how to be a great designer. So, the things I could learn, I learned as aggressively and as quickly as possible. And then the things I just felt like I couldn't learn 6 skills at the same time. So I could learn these 3. And for those other 3, I needed to hire as soon as possible. But I couldn't hire because I didn't have any money. So new challenge was I need to fundraise so I can hire people to do the things that not only am I not good at, but it's going to take me too long to learn to be on pace with the market. So the first round of funding was about $250,000. That allowed us to start building out the existing team here in Pittsburgh. That was the first hire we made, VP of engineering, right? Very clear to me, we need somebody that can understand the architecture and the scalability of this product. We need somebody that can manage other engineers. They need somebody that can tell me what I don't know about building a software application. And finding that person, because I know talent, is a frequent sticking point for people. And it was a really hard hire. It was the second most challenging hire I've ever made. The first one was the VP of sales. The way I found Jess, who we ended up hiring, is I went to there's a couple technology meetups. There's a couple technology conferences in Pittsburgh. So I emailed all of the organizers. I said, hey, this guy have this app. It has real traction. 2014, it was absurd that you would actually have anybody pay for your software product. This is like at the height of like not paying for stuff. And so I said, look, people paying for it. It's this little app here. It does X, Y, and Z. I have real people using it. We're trying to get more ingrained in the technology community here in Pittsburgh. Do you have time to meet up for a coffee? I would sit down. My only goal of that conversation was to prove that I wasn't, there's kind of this classic, I'm not an MBA student looking for a co-founder to build me the entire product. Like that's what everybody worries about. They just need a technical co-founder. So I need to show up and say, no, I already have a product. I already have customers. I need somebody to help me scale it. And through a couple of these conversations, eventually I got introduced to more software engineers, and that's how I found Jess. So that's always kind of been one of my, for lack of a better word, secret sauces for hiring people is go to the community leaders, go to the organizers, and then show up as a very thoughtful, curious, empathetic person and see what doors can open up from that.
So with picking up sales quickly, you mentioned that you can pick that up as long as you don't have head trash. What is that?
Yeah, so if you have all these preconceived notions that I'm not a salesperson and salespeople are slimy or salespeople manipulate, if you have all these worries about that's what a salesperson is, then you're going to read a sales book and not take any action on it, right? So if that's you probably have to go back and start to revisit your own belief systems and change your belief system about what a salesperson actually does. Good salespeople, the problem is most of us interact with really, really bad salespeople. And then we assume that's what a salesperson is. Very rarely do we get sold by somebody that is great at their craft, which would be selling. So, if you have that, you need to go into your brain and you need to read books like Zero Resistance Selling is one of my all-time favorite sales books about the psychology of selling, about what you need to think about as a salesperson, how you need to prime your own mentality and brain as you go into selling. That's really important. If you don't, let's say best case scenario, you're kind of indifferent. Some salespeople are good, some people are bad. Great. Pick up a book and learn what the good people do. And what good people do, they ask questions. One of my favorite sales questions, I remember early in Jetpack Workflow, people would come in, they get on a demo. My favorite question to ask them is, what brought you on the call today? My favorite sales question. Well, kind of juggling these different spreadsheets. And, I just hired, our 3rd employee. And, at 2, it was okay. But at 3, it's really challenging. And I could start to feel, some cracks in the firm and we're missing due dates. And, okay, great. And I just kept asking questions, right? Okay, tell me more about how long it takes to manage these spreadsheets and who does it and what it looks like. Okay, great. I think I really understand what you're going through. How about I show you Jetpack Workflow and I could show you how about we solve X, Y, and Z. But I take the time to listen. I think that's what great salespeople do is they fundamentally want to ask you questions. They want to get to understand what you're going through. They're very empathetic on the front end of sales. But when it gets to the point where you ask for the deal, they're also not timid. I think one of the biggest mistakes is if you have almost your two Mother Teresa in sales, which you ask all the questions and you'll go through, yeah, and these are the services we can provide you, and it's great. And then almost before you get to the sale, you say, so I'm going to give you this and you take some time to think about it. Oh, killer. Why you did all that work. You show them, hey, you have a painful problem. Here's the solution. Why don't you think about it? It's like, no. Could you imagine going to like a doctor's office and being like, I have knee pain. And the doctor's like, oh, great. I see it's ligament A, B, and C. I have a knee brace for you. Tell you what, here's a brochure. Come back in a week and let me know if you want the knee brace. It would just like, you'd be like, doc, are you stupid? Give me the knee brace. I'm hurting. Please give me this knee brace. But I think if you lean too into not having enough chutzpah or whatever to ask for the sale, you're just killing everything. You're killing your own firm by not asking for it. You're killing the relationship with that client. If you're saying, I'm going to be an advisor for you, and you don't ask for the sale, when you truly believe in it, when you can truly solve the problem, you are not an advisor. Because for the same reason, I wouldn't say a doctor's an advisor if they have the solution and they're like, go think about it. Like, think about what? I can't walk. I need a knee brace. What do I have to think about? And so anyways, yeah, I guess that answers your question a little bit with a little bit of a side rant.
No, I love the doctor analogy. That is hilarious. And, something that Tom and I do on our sales calls at the firm, because, CPAs are just not naturally gifted salespeople. But what we have...
Yeah, I have a secret for you. 99.9% are not naturally gifted salespeople. Nobody comes out of the room and starts selling, pacifiers, right?
Well, I agree. I think that the problem with professional services is that I don't necessarily have to go and actively sell people and they're still going to buy. And so then you see like all these CPAs, especially, that they're just awful at sales. And something that we learned to do to kind of get over this uncomfortable ask is just at the end of the call, ask whoever the prospect is there anything holding you back from signing today? And they'll tell you, yes, I've got to talk to my spouse or whatever. And you say, cool, can we actually schedule the next phone call then? And let's get the spouse on the call too. Or they'll say, no, that's a great question. And yeah, go ahead and send over a proposal. And you've asked without actually asking.
I love that. I call it, it's like the pre-close, right? Phrase it's like, based on everything you heard today, do you have any concerns or reservations about moving forward with Jetpack Workflow? And if they're like, no, but here's the other thing too. Here's the beauty of that question. If they say no, and you're like, cool, well, I'm going to send over a proposal. Let's schedule a time tomorrow to do the kickoff meeting. That'll give you 24 hours to just look through it and sign it off. And then, get it sent over. Or I don't know, I'm not saying you can do this, but you might say, look, I sent you over the proposal now. How about we just get his signature on file and we'll do a kickoff meeting tomorrow. And then the interesting thing about asking for the close, is then you get the real answer. Then they're like, oh, hold on. What happens if I cancel? Where does my data go? And you're like, oh, okay, great. And then you get more information, right? Or wait a second, do you have an integration with QuickBooks? I don't think we went through that. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it. Do you offer cash flow advisory? Do you offer, whatever, what happens? And when you ask for the close, I think a lot of people start thinking like, oh, if I ask for the close, I either get a yes or a no. And if I get a no, then I'm going to really feel bad about myself. And if I get a yes, I'm going to go celebrate and eat a cookie or macaroon or something like that. But here's the thing. Getting a no is not a bad thing. Getting a no is a great thing as long as you say, tell me why. Oh, what's holding you back? It's not so, you shouldn't be so scared of the no. You should just be like, okay, great. I guess we didn't cover something. What are we missing? What other questions do you have? And I think it just turns the mindset of asking for the sale.
100%. This entire thing has been great sales advice for this entire conversation. One of the things also, when you get to know, right, their real objections are now uncovered. And now you can actually walk them through the objectives. And another thing you said that I really liked is you're scheduling a kickoff call with them the next day, or you're setting a date of when it does, because now that puts a timeline, a deadline on when that proposal needs to be signed, which is I found to be very interesting.
So like everyone, most people, I should say, I learned this the hard way, is that I don't know why, I will never know why, but there is a part of the human psychology that will defer a decision until the longest possible point they can defer it without being negatively penalized. So should I do X, Y, and Z? They will defer the decision until they start to lose money, make money, gain weight, lose this, lose that. Like so many people, the majority of people will defer. So it's kind of like water. If you're not being the advisor and guiding them to the solution, it's like going to find all the creeks. So you're like, oh, I'm going to send you a proposal. And it's like, great, I'll take a look at it. right? And they're just going to like delay. Oh yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at it. Hey, I got super busy, which really just means you're not a priority to me. That's all busy me, this isn't a priority to me. I'm super busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. Oh yeah, my son Billy broke his leg and I got to go take him to the hospital. I'm so sorry. It's been crazy. And then like 6 weeks go by and you keep emailing this person. You're like, are we doing this? Are we not doing this? And I'm not saying that's everyone. I'm not saying everybody delays the decision. But if you get to the point where, okay, you understand the pain, you understand what happens to them by not solving it, which probably means their business is worse off. You have a solution that you feel confident can solve it. By them delaying the decision, they don't really know it at the time, but it's hurting them. So I like to try and create a crystal clear map of expectations. And also, look, if somebody says, you know what, I looked at the proposal, not right timing, not right place, that's fine. But the worst thing you can do is kind of leave it in purgatory and you just don't know where you stand. And that's the thing you're always trying to diplomatically avoid is like, somebody ghosting you or going silent during the sales process.
Absolutely. I think it's important to understand that every no gets you closer to a yes, or it gets you closer to I don't have to waste time anymore on this prospect, and we can move on to the next one. So David, so you hired a VP of engineering and then you've scaled out the team. How many people does Jetpack Workflow have today?
18 total.
18. What issues, challenges, maybe negative experiences have you had scaling out a team? Because I know from my experience that it's really the hardest part. Like you said, you can pick up sales and marketing pretty quickly. At least you can get 80% viable. But the people piece, that's the challenging part. So I'm curious to know what you've faced along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say there was a key inflection point for us at 10 people. At 10 people, everything became twice as hard. And that's because I forget, somebody drew it out that like when it's just you and one other person, passive communication is just one line. You add another one, you have 3 lines. So it's tripled. It's not doubled, it's tripled just by hiring one more person. So you've increased 2 to 3, which is not doubling, but your lines of communications have tripled. And you keep hiring and it keeps exponentially growing the communication paths that are in your firm or in your business. And I found it could be 8, it could be 12. For me, it was 10. I was just like really starting to feel like I literally couldn't communicate. I was like, how does no one understand this? What am I not saying or saying? And I just had to all of a sudden become very thoughtful. And it's been an ongoing journey about how we communicate, how we manage, how we set goals, how we set accountability, how we set scorecards. At 10, I think I had like 2 managers. Now we have 4 managers, or at least, people reporting to them. We have 4 that have direct reports. And so now it's like everything I communicate to them or everything I communicate to the company, it's like everything needs to be crystal clear. And I'm not saying I do this all the time, but every time I get it wrong, I feel it's times 17. every time I get something wrong, every time I don't communicate a goal, every time I'm not articulate on what the project is and what it means and what we're doing, it's just the pain is compounding. So yes, you have to all of a sudden be very thoughtful about how you communicate. You have to be very thoughtful on how you plan. I'm trying to think, the real challenge is when you have different silos all doing the best they possibly can, but in different directions. And your organization starts to go really slow, or your firm starts to go really slow. Your ability to onboard new clients or grab new deals or launch new services or launch new marketing campaigns, everything starts to feel like mud if you don't solve this problem. And as you know, like to me, to my mind, speed matters, right? It's one of our values, default to action. You need to be focused and you need to take action. And it's really hard to take action when we have 17 people or 10 people going 5%, they're all going kind of the same way, but they're starting to split 5% over here, 5% over here, 5% over here, 5% over here. It's really, really hard. That is definitely challenging. All of a sudden doing things. So like we're fans of EOS, creating a vision traction organizer. What's our purpose? What's our niche? What's our 3-year target? What's our 10-year? What's our marketing uniques? 3 uniques, as EOS would call it. At 5 people, you just turn to the person next to you and be like, what we're trying to do right now is not die. Like we're just trying to survive in this game long enough to hit enough traction to not die. But then once you get past that, you're like, oh man, we really have something here. This is great. Like, hey, I think, we got something. Like we're clearly onto something here. Okay, so where do we want to be when we grow up? And when it's 10 people, that's hard. When it's 17, it's harder. I will say, I think we are turning a point where it is starting to get easier because, we're just putting basic management disciplines into the business. Stronger forecasting, stronger project management, stronger scorecards, stronger accountability. We're saying no to more things. We're recognizing cross-functional contributions to complete projects. It's, in a software company, it's like, I have a marketing team, I have a sales team, I have an engineering team. With that is product design. I have a setup and support team. Each one is its own service team. It's like I'm running 7 different service teams in a 17-person firm or business. So, it's super hard.
So let's talk about the scorecard and accountability. What sort of structure are you putting in place to kind of enhance that communication, enhance that accountability, and make sure that everyone is aimed at the goalposts that you want them to be aiming at?
Yeah, this is a journey for us, not a destination. So, we read the book Traction. I've read it, goodness, probably 6 times. I read Rocket Fuel. We even subscribe to like their master class you could go through. So here's what we have. We have our Vision Traction Organizer, page 1, crystal clear. So we know that our purpose is to help professionals do their best work. We do that by helping them solve painful workflow problems. That's our niche, painful workflow problems. If it sits under there, that's what we want to do. Now we've defined our 3-year, we've defined our 10, we've defined our value metric. So that just helps everybody understand conceptually where we're going. Then what we've done, so I'll give you a couple tactical things we do. We run, they call it level 10 meetings in EOS. Level 10 meeting, its goal is for the managers and leaders to all get together every week to touch base on the weekly progress towards meeting a monthly or quarterly goal and getting updates on projects and see what's blocking those things that you need to unblock in the next 7 days. I will just focus on L10 for a little bit because L10, and this is maybe you can extrapolate this for almost any management system. We went into EOS. We're like, L10 sounds great. We're going to do it. Everything's going to be amazing. We did it for 2 months. We're like, it's not amazing. What's going on? Okay, maybe we're missing something. What we found is we just had to refine our approach to level 10 to work for us. So, we have our metrics in there every week. And if we're off on a metric, it's red. Now, for example, EOS would say, okay, if it's a red metric, it's an issue. And then you go through this process of identify the issue, what's the root cause, let's discuss some solutions, and we'll create a solution, IDS. We have so many functional metrics we could look at every week that something was always red, and we would have the same conversation every week, and it would waste a lot of time, for lack of a better, So we came up with a little rule, and this is a little outside of level 10. If you're a functional owner and you have a red metric, we expect you to do a write-up of why it's red, what you're thinking about doing to fix it, and if you need any help from the rest of us, what questions or what resources you need from us to help solve it if you really are stuck. And so that little update, which is very like Amazon-esque, you just write a little 1-pager or half a page with those answers. And if we feel good about it, then cool. We don't need to talk about it. There's no issue here. You're the owner of that metric. You've already thought of a solution. You're the closest to that metric, so you're probably you're most apt to create a solution. So we no longer need to talk about this every single week or every 2 weeks or every month. So I would just say I love EOS. I love level 10s. I love what they do. But you always need to kind of like refine it and think back like, and here's another mistake we fell into because I know you follow EOS. So EOS, because we have it on Wednesday. We'd leave these meetings and we'd go out and we'd go into marketing or become the sales leader or engineering or success. The only time managers would really talk is every Wednesday, which is not a good thing. And we would put so much pressure on trying to squeeze as much out of this little meeting called a level 10 as possible that it was becoming very detrimental. And so we just had to put reminders at the beginning of every meeting that said, don't come here to solve problems. If you see a problem, go talk to the other leader and try to triage it before you get to this meeting. Because again, it's just not front of mind. Management issues are not front of mind. They're not typically urgent, but they're most likely important, which in a busy firm, you're always going to go after the fires. Oh, we need to run new ad copy. We need to close this big deal. Oh, there's a big bug. And things would just linger and we'd come back to the next meeting and nothing was resolved. So we just kept pushing people and nudging them. Say, go talk. Yeah, go talk with Chip. That sounds great. Go open up Slack. Right. We also created a rule. No more Google Sheet comment. There are no more comments inside of the Google slide. Only do it in Slack. right? Because we're trying to push people to talk more often. And this is a perfect example of a challenge at 5 people I would have never thought of. I'm like, what are you talking about? I have to help people work together outside of the meeting. I'm like, what? That doesn't sound like a challenge. At 17, we had to remind people because everyone here is a player coach. Everyone here is managing that function, but they also have to go in and do the work as well. We have nobody that's just 100% a manager. So they go back to becoming player and they surface up to be a coach. So anyways, those are a couple of thoughts and rants.
No, I love it. Real quick question, and I know Tom's got another one for you too. So the way accounting firms are structured, we've got managers, senior associates, and then associates, right? That's the level hierarchy. From my experience, it's been a lot easier to hold managers accountable to metrics than it has been seniors and associates. I have found that it's actually very difficult to hold associates, the lower level employees, accountable to metrics, because at the end of the day, we just want them to work. We just want them to work a full week and produce for us. We load their plate up. So we hold them to turnaround time. We hold them to task deliverables and things like that. But I'm curious if you've experienced something similar and how you hold the lower level staff accountable to results.
Yeah, it's, I'll give you 2. The first snippet though, and this is something I learned, from somebody we did hire, our VP of sales. What he does for his sales team is he asks them for the goals. What's your plan? He asks them to create the first draft of what the goals look like. That doesn't mean that's what the goals end up being, but he asks for what do you think your goal should be for this month? And why do you think that? So to me, that kind of flipped the tables on my mentality a little bit as well, where if you have them create the output goals, most people are going to come up with pretty rational, logical things. And if you have them create the goals, it also builds ownership into being metric-based or goal-based or outcome-based, which I thought was great. That was something that was on my radar until he did that. So I thought that was really cool. Another example of how this breaks down is, so we have our marketing team. We have goals for how much traffic we want to the website. We have goals for how many leads we want to get in a year. And, we just hired a digital content manager. Okay. So her goal is going to be how much organic content views are we getting month over month and how is that increasing? So in that case, it worked out really, really well, which is we have this marketing goal, maybe it's get X number of leads. How do we get those leads? We get more traffic. How do we get more traffic? We create better, more SEO friendly content. Who's going to do that? Digital content manager. So she knows this metric and part of this bigger plan, you own this. And by you doing well on this, it helps everything else cascade up to help the rest of the organization. But we hired that individual because we said, we have this goal. We can't meet it with current capacity. So we're hiring this person. And so when she started asking us during the interview, what's your ideal outcome for this role? We're like, oh, we actually have the very specific result we want for this role, in 2020. And here it is. And she was like, that's great. She loved the clarity. So I would say if you don't have that, and even if you have an existing team, ask them what they think the output should be in a given month. And it could just be, and they could be wildly off, and that's okay. And then the manager can kind of explain how these goals are created in the first place and how you look at capacity, utilization, workload, and it's a good training opportunity. So anyways, and then look, I gave you all the easy examples. The hard example is engineering, and managing engineering is extremely challenging. And there's all kinds of management techniques. There's points and there's t-shirt sizing. What we ended up doing with that is we adopted, and there's all kinds of different models for output and metric tracking for engineers. We follow one that's pretty similar to this company called Basecamp. We just run in 6-week cycles. What can we build in 6 weeks? And we could still look at what issues are being closed and throughput and output. We can see that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's, I would say ask your people. And then when you do strategic planning every year, your outcome should then help you decide if you need to hire somebody to help you reach that.
That's great insights right there. And before we go on to the next question, I just want to point out that there's this book out there that I found extremely helpful when helping set goals and making sure people understand what the goals are and what the expectations are. And that's a book called The New 1 Minute Manager. I actually read that book several times. Really clearly explains how to make sure someone understands what their goals are, and then helping them make sure that they understand when they are hitting their goals and when they're not. And it provides, kind of tactics on how to make sure people understand that type of information. And I just felt that was very helpful. And before we get on to how Jetpack Workflow helps accountants specifically, I just want to ask one more question. Was there any point throughout this journey that you're currently on where you faced a challenge so tough that you felt like, this is it, I'm throwing in the towel, this isn't going to work? And if you did face the challenge, what was the challenge and what helped you overcome that?
Yeah. So the only time I thought like this isn't going to work, I'm going to need to figure out a different career path, it was early on in what's called idea extraction when I was interviewing people. So I was interviewing dental practices. I thought I had a painful problem, which is like nobody brings their dental insurance card to the dental office and takes time to look up what insurance provider you have because it could be different than your health insurance or your medical insurance. And I got really excited. Yeah, I finally found a painful problem. Sounds like people are going to want it. And I realized that like nobody would buy it and it was complicated and X, Y, and Z, it wasn't going to happen. So I got really bummed out. I spent the weekend watching documentaries, mainly boxing documentaries. There's something oddly fulfilling if you feel beaten down to watch people like get beaten down and get back up. You're like, well, I guess I'm not getting actually punched in the face. Like, this is pretty amazing. They get back up so many times after getting punched in the face. So there's something about watching boxing documentaries that was very therapeutic for me that weekend. And I started thinking, I said, well, maybe I'll go get a job. Like, maybe this isn't going to work out. I don't want to be a freelance marketer anymore. So I'm going to go get a job. And I think, different people have that kind of daydream at different times. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to literally, so here's what I did that was so helpful. I mapped out exactly what my life would look like if I stopped doing what I'm doing. So this is what I mean by that. I would like, okay, I'm going to stop trying to build something. I'm going to stop being a freelancer. I'm going to go get a job. What's a job I could probably get? Let's just say I'm like a marketing associate at some XYZ company. Okay, what does that look like? Well, every day I'd probably wake up 7:00. Maybe I'd go to the gym. Cool. Or maybe I'd read. I'd get ready. I'd drive to work. I'd work from 9 to 6 or 9 to 5:30. It'd probably be pretty nice. I had some nice coworkers. I even visualized what my desk would look like. Maybe I'd pack lunch. Maybe I'd go out to eat. I literally pictured the whole day. I pictured me driving home. I'd be listening to podcasts. I pictured what I would do in the evenings. And I would go, I don't know, play tennis or basketball or something like that. And then I'd come home and read. And then the thing that really effed me up was I got to 8:30 at night. And I was like, what would I do at 8:30 at night? And then I realized that 8:30 at night is when I would start trying to create a side hustle and side project. And I would keep doing that until I figured it out. And I was like, okay, so if I go out and I play out my dream scenario, like what I think is going to be easier or whatever, I go get a job. I'm only going to come back and try to start something all over again. Like I just pictured in my brain, I was like, I just know I'm going to be spending evenings and spending weekends, just like I'm doing now, trying to figure out how to build something. So if I'm destined to be in this spot, I should quit complaining and just figure it out. And that was like very reassuring to me. It's like, if I'm just going to keep ending up here, then, and I don't think this is like rocket science. Like if you keep, I also thought of this whole feedback loop. I was like, if I keep taking action and I keep getting results, maybe they're bad results, like nobody's buying my stuff. And I reflect on, why is nobody buying my stuff? Oh, maybe I'm a bad salesperson. I'm going to go out and figure out what good salespeople do. I'm going to learn that. I'm going to go back and try to sell again. If I followed that feedback loop of take action, get results, get feedback, change course if necessary, learn more stuff, and then go back and take more action. If I just kept doing that loop, I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm insane, but I have to figure it out if I keep doing that loop. Like eventually I'm going to keep learning and getting a little bit better and a little bit better. And like eventually something's going to have to land because I keep improving. Like I just believed in the process. So I'm like, if I'm destined to try to do a side hustle or build a company, create a startup, if I keep following this feedback loop, all right, and I keep my expenses low, so AKA I don't personally file for bankruptcy and go under, then this should work out in some way. And I don't know if it's going to be the current thing I'm on or something else, but it has to, in my head, I'm like, it has to work out. I'm not the smartest person on the planet, but I'm certainly smart enough to like take feedback and get better. So anyways, that was the lowest point. It's like 2012.
When you built out this like easy scenario, did the mediocrity kind of like shy you away from it and encourage you more? Because for me, when I was hearing all of that, go to job, be on a schedule, yada, 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 for me, my fear has always just been mediocrity. Like I always wanted to do something that's different, unique, build. I'm wondering if you experienced the same thing, or it was just that at 8:30 every day, I'm going to be building a business anyway, so might as well just do this.
It was kind of like worried that I would be bored. And I always thought, building your own thing is kind of like having your own sandbox where you get to try and create and test out new ideas. By the way, I found that as you scale up and you're at 17 people, it's, believe me, most of your day is not sandbox. Most of it's like process solving, at least until you maybe get somebody like an integrator or an ops person. The thing for me is that as I went through that process, I'm just fascinated and curious by the going through the process of trying to build something. I thought it was just like, and that's why like even before Jetpack, I did tennis camps. I was like, that seems fun. Let me launch a tennis camp. I've never launched a tennis camp. I'm going to go and do that. I was a drum teacher. Somebody was posting stuff on Craigslist. My son needs to learn how to play drums. So I played drums for like 8 years. I can at least teach somebody, the first 2 years how to play. And so I started I'll teach you how to play drums business. I was just doing a bunch of little things because I just wanted to keep learning. And I guess my biggest worry, even though I've never had a real job, so this is very biased, is that I just wouldn't learn at the pace I wanted to learn at. And I wouldn't grow at the pace I wanted to grow at, And then fortunately, nobody would also hire me because I did apply to a job for some point. They're like, yeah, psych degree, no thanks. So yeah, I guess, a lot of people start something. It always boils down to freedom, lifestyle freedom, income freedom, creativity, building freedom. So that was certainly it for me.
100%. And just real quick, like, it's the same reason why I couldn't work for a national accounting firm, just because you're so trapped in a box. Anyway, with Jetpack Workflow, would you be able to quickly tell us a little bit about what Jetpack Workflow does for accountants, and then also how they can contact you or learn more about Jetpack Workflow?
Yeah, we do two primary things, just to keep it really simple, because I know we're running out of time. First and foremost, we help you get organized extremely fast inside of your accounting firm so nothing falls through the cracks. So we help you standardize the services that you're doing. We help you automate things like the recurrence of those services. And then we give you a simple set of tools to track everything that's going on in your firm so you know what's coming up, what's falling through the cracks, what's overdue. So big goal number one we help you with, we'll get you hyper organized very fast. And not only do we have software, but we have a setup team, we have support people, we have salespeople whose goal is to help you get set up and organized quickly. And the second thing is, let's say you're already a very organized firm. The second thing we really help out people is we help you manage your team. So if you're hitting that ceiling where you're not sure what people are doing and what they're working on or why they're working on certain things, we'll give you a set of management views so you understand where the bottlenecks are, so you can, collaborate with your team inside of the application. You can view some basic, capacity reporting inside of the tool. Those are really the two primary ways we help accounting firms: is help you get organized and help you manage your team. Oh, sorry. If somebody wants to get a hold of me or learn more about the software, we have a free trial. We're not afraid to talk to people. Some software companies are. You could always go to jetpackworkflow.com. You could book a call with us. You can chat with us. You can just start a trial on your own. If you don't want to talk to anybody, that's okay too. And, my personal email is david@jetpackworkflow.com. If you have questions about building, launching, growing, great, hit me up. If you have questions about like the software application, honestly, the best bet is to email hello@jetpackworkflow.com. You're just going to get a faster response. If you're looking at the tool today and you're like, I need to decide today, if you go to the website, that's the quickest way. hello@jetpackworkflow.com goes straight to our sales team. And then the final thing I'll mention is like you guys, we have a podcast called Growing Your Firm. Brandon's been on it, talked about his hyper growth journey and building his firm. So that's called Growing Your Firm Podcast. I think we're 150 interviews in so far, and that's just a free resource on interviewing people like you all that come from the trenches on what it really takes to grow your firm.
That's an excellent podcast as well. Want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show today. It's been an excellent episode for sure.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on iTunes and share the show with other business owners who may be facing their own growth challenges. And if you own a professional services firm, consider joining our private community. The Staying Power Collective is a community where owners of accounting, law, and consulting firms discuss best practices for running and growing virtual businesses. You'll get access to our Slack group, and you'll have a Zoom meeting once a month with a small group of other firm owners. To apply for the group, head on over to www.stayingpowercollective.com and fill out the brief form. And if you have suggestions for future topics or guests, or if you have general questions or feedback, send us an email at contact@stayingpowercollective.com. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great rest of your week.